Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Obviously wasn't supposed to stream today. It's my fucking day off. Of course it has, but it's always on my day off. Whenever the president, like the former president, gets an assassination attempt, it's my day off. It's Israel starts bombing places, it's my day off. Well, I am not caught up with what's happened. I was out. I had a busy day. Today's going to be a short stream, by the way. I do have friends coming over in a bit, and I would much rather hang out with my friends than sit here and talk about the impending doom of society and all of that. But there's some important stuff that I think needs to be said here. But let's get a general understanding of what's happened. I kind of know, but I haven't looked into this much yet, so let's just learn together here.
Israeli military spokesman Daniel Hagari has just spoken in the last few minutes. Let's listen to what he had to say.
In response to months of continuous attacks from the regime in Iran against the state of Israel, right now, the Israel Defense Forces is conducting precise strikes on military targets in Iran. The regime in Iran and its proxies in the region have been relentlessly attacking Israel since October 7th on 7 fronts, including direct attacks from Iranian soil. Like every other sovereign country in the world, the state of Israel has the right and the duty to respond. Our defensive and offensive capabilities are fully mobilized. We will
it doesn't seem like they used their fully mobilized
to defend the state of Israel and the people of Israel.
Offensive weapons, by the way.
Well, that was from the Israeli military spokesman, Daniel Hagari. But let's go back to Rasul Sardar, our correspondent who's live for us in Tehran. Rasul, can you talk us through whether there's been any updates since we just last spoke? Obviously, this is a moving story, a very significant one, especially now that Israel has confirmed that it is carrying out those strikes on Iran.
Indeed, as of now, in the capital, we are not hearing any sounds of the explosions. However,
okay, I can get through this faster than fucking Al Jazeera can. I'm sorry, Al Jazeera. So, I'll even use Al Jazeera. This happened a few hours ago. It was surprisingly not as big as we expected it to be. They obviously, they used force more than they should have, which is none at all. I don't know, how do you talk about like an Israeli bombing compared to a normal bombing? Where it was like America bombed Iraq, for example, right? Let's take that, for example. We were not nice in how we did that. We weren't restrained, obviously. And that was a extreme level, at for the global discourse around it, especially in hindsight, we destroyed Iraq. We annihilated them. We spent so much money and dropped so many bombs and killed so many civilians, as well as, it was 100,000 it was like a 250,000 death toll just for civilians in Iraq, I'm pretty sure. And so that was considered extreme at the time. I still would consider that extreme. But then we look at what Israel's done with Gaza, and that's a whole other level. I mean, obviously, that is significantly more. That is significantly worse. It is deliberate in a way that is different than the way that we deliberately bombed Iraq. So when we're talking about, I mean, not just in Gaza, obviously, because the same thing is what's happening right now in Lebanon. They're bombing Beirut the same exact way. And so you expect a sort of beyond where the normal line would be response, and this seemed to be within that normal line, and it took me off guard. Obviously, it seems to me that this is just like testing their defensive capabilities, as well as trying to incite internal hey, hold on, sorry. Frank, get down from there. Do not knock my shit over. Hey, down. Down, buddy. Come on. Come on. You're interrupting me while I'm live? Well, now you gotta pay the tax, which is to say hi to chat. Mwah. You're not allowed to go up there and knock my lights over. Where was I? So, what actually did they hit? Well, we can see on my UA map exactly what they did, but right now that doesn't particularly matter. It's the bombing itself was not kicking off the war. Again, this is another pot shot. They want Iran to make the first move that is seen as aggressive. As you can see, like if we go on Reuters or any of the other Western media, they're reporting it on as rather retaliatory strikes from Israel towards Iran, whereas you can't call it a retaliatory strike for the strike that you, like the pattern that you began. Israel hit them first. And this wasn't just, hitting brief targets, military bases around. This was, again, at their capital city. Now, Iran also, this has escalated to a point where there are missiles consistently now going between capital cities of these two, countries. Obviously, they're already at war. We're just not calling it that. And Israel wants to drag the United States into it. Again, we got the news that just minutes before the attack actually started, Israel notified the United States, which we know is, I guess, somewhat based in truth. I'm sure they gave them a call, be like, all right, we're starting. But the Pentagon knew exactly what was happening. We had the, documents. We've read them on stream before. This idea that we're not involved and that we're not directing some of this is ridiculous. Even in Gaza, Israel was getting some of the coordinates for its attacks from Pine Gap, which is, in Australia, which is an American military base, part of the Five Eyes network, which Israel is not. So we know that we've been working with them throughout this, and we're not. Think about how a giant bureaucracy, a military of a country works, right? A bureaucracy is a bunch of small moving little parts, and it's built to continue in the direction that it's going. A government bureaucracy, especially a country's military, is essentially built to function with maintaining the velocity that it's going in the direction that it's going. Changing and shifting what the policy is difficult. That's generally how it works, especially when it comes to foreign countries and foreign allies and foreign adversaries, because there's always this hesitation that doesn't exist when you're referring to things that could happen, consequences that could come out of a action or a situation in your own country, because you can somewhat predict those better. You can assess the idea of what could happen better. And whereas it's a big structure that all has to assess that it's worth doing this to stop, for example, arming Israel. Now, obviously, there are things that specific people in power, like the president, for example, could do to move this along. But without that, it's not realistically likely to have petered out on its own. And so we know that we're likely almost certainly helping them with targeting, with intel and just covert spying. They have the Mossad and they work with the CIA. They don't even like each other, but we know that these systems are in place. It's difficult to keep them in mind because they're these inhuman ideas of vast networks of people constantly Big Brother is spying on you. It's difficult to conceptualize. And so it's difficult to add into the discourse because it's not, we're not looking at, well, look, here's some pictures of missiles flying in the sky. But you can't, the United States right now, right? The response that we gave is that we are not involved, no knowledge, nothing, here we go. No U.S. involvement in Israel's military operation. against targets in Iran, officials say, and Reuters, Iran. The idea of putting this out as if anyone believes it is ridiculous. This is just, again, propaganda in order to maintain the facade that Israel is defending itself here and not the aggressor, which it isn't. It is absolutely the aggressor in this situation. But I think that there's something being ignored here, at least in what I've seen in the headlines and the short articles that I've read in the videos, is everyone's focusing on the intent of this in the way of maybe testing air defenses, or specifically, you know, if you look at CNN, it's like, oh, they were targeting specific airfields, and it was a somewhat proportional attack to what Iran did to them just a couple of weeks ago. But there's more than this. The Israeli government knows that the discourse and the social feeling towards the government inside of Iran is, let's just say, on the tip of an iceberg. It has been for a while. If you remember a couple years back, both in 2021 really and in 2022, all the way to 23, there were massive protests in Iran over the treatment of women, over the illegality of not wearing a headscarf. There were police brutality, obviously, and that has stayed consistent with the Iranian people as a discontent. And this might be, I mean, I don't know. Like, they could just want to, like, Israel rather, could just want to start a war, no matter what. Like, no thinking forward, no strategic aspects to it. Just start a war. We want to fire rockets at each other. They realistically could have that intention, but if they're looking for, you know, a longer term way of going about attacking Iran that isn't necessarily just full on annihilation through like bombs and guns and probably nuclear weapons, I'm sure, because, you know, we do know Israel has one and they are the only people crazy enough to use it, could be to just stoke internal, well, actually, we already know that they do this. They've done this in the past. They specifically fund separatist groups inside of Iran, like Kurdish separatist groups specifically, which exist in that region in Turkey, in Iraq, in Syria, in Iran, and have been the minority that all of these different countries and their governments have attacked and oppressed throughout, you know, the last couple hundred years at the very least, at least since how long has that gone on for? I mean, at least since the end of the Ottoman Empire, which is a tactic that's been used by multiple countries throughout the region in wars as proxies. I mean, we did it with in Syria when we were fighting ISIS in Syria, and Assad in Syria as well. And Assad did it, and the Russians did it. We all, like, the Kurds have been a very useful tool for Western countries to use as proxies. And I mean, just look at Turkey. They had a bombing of like a government contractor for aerospace just the other day. And then what did they do afterwards? They started bombing Iraq and Syria because they blamed the Kurds. Whether they did or not, I don't know. I'm sure probably, I guess, who knows? Turkey says a lot of things, and this is like a historical, consistent suppression of media who I have no idea what they're doing. Realistically, they could be doing anything. That's the thing when you have a country that has descended into fascism, into authoritarianism, into a theocracy, or any of the above. All of them include a suppression of the media and the suppression of information, so you don't realistically know. They have, I mean, if they didn't control what people thought, then they couldn't do anything. It is a base necessity to have that power. I mean, we've seen that historically with every fascist country or region or kingdom or civilization in history. Authoritarians, they all, who knows? Fuck it, man. I'm so tired of listening and thinking and talking about just people killing each other for just other people, for no other reason. I mean, Israel will talk about how it's self-defense, and there's hundreds of people, there's thousands of people, there's millions of Israelis that believe that this is necessary because they're constantly under threat, that they're personally going to die, that they are personally at risk. And there's a bunch of Iranians also thinking like, oh, well, they want to destroy the country, they want to kill all of us, they hate us, and we hate them, and blah, blah, blah. It's been going back and forth. And why the fuck are we, as America, in the middle of this? Why do we care about their centuries-old, blood feud? I don't give a fuck. If they want to kill each other, they really should not do that, But I don't want to help them. Why am I if I'm involved in something, it's to stop it. That's why we stopped the genocide of Bosnians in Serbia. The United Nations, which was definitely being championed by the United States at the time. Bill Clinton's the one that ordered the goddamn bombing of Serbia. That's the only kind of interference that I want in a conflict like this, is to put a stop to it, and that's it. I don't care about their personal grievances. They can sort them out in a normal way that isn't killing each other. Why is that so hard for humans to wrap our heads around? Why does that confuse us to the point where we don't manage to do that? Well, because the people in power benefit from this, obviously. And by the people in power here, I'm talking specifically about Netanyahu, but as well as American corporations that, are government contractors, people like Boeing, people like SpaceX and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Boeing. Sorry, I already said Boeing, but you guys get the point. And this has always been a factor. And it's not just a factor, but it was one of the biggest factors. It was one of the biggest pushes for the Iraq War, which again, we had to make up the reason to have the Iraq War. We didn't have any actual evidence. We lied to Congress, and by we, I mean, Cheney and Bush did, to start that war. Why? Because it was profitable and because it helped them politically. And here we come to the second criteria of why people are, spreading lies and why we believe these lies, is because it benefits people politically. That's the second layer under money. And this is a very niche thing. Most people don't give a shit about politics. At least the average American doesn't pay attention to what politicians say. Now, obviously for the Iraq War, this was immediately after 9/11, and a lot of people were bloodthirsty. We were paying attention. We wanted action. And by, again, we, I mean the American people. And you can see the ease in which a system that was built to do this, to take a population and maintain their fervor for a war effort, could manage to actually do that if a population was sufficiently afraid and sufficiently angry enough. Now, I'm not suggesting the government did 9/11 or something. I'm not crazy or a conspiracy theorist, but it doesn't matter. It was something like that was bound to happen. It doesn't need to be a false flag. 9/11 was just blowback for decades of U.S. foreign policy before that, and October 7th was blowback for decades of Israeli policy against the Palestinians in the occupation, in apartheid, in I mean, the things that we know officially are bad enough, but obviously there's unofficial things. There's things that don't make it into the papers. There's people. We think about all of this stuff in a zoomed out context so often that we forget to think about what it's like to be a person in an environment where you're not safe ever. And you could be walking down the street to a market and any person you interact with could be nice to you. They could just be another person like you, but there's an equal chance that it could be someone who wants to harm you. And to be clear here, I'm not talking about just Israel being the people that might harm people in Gaza or in the West Bank throughout the occupation. I mean, the way that we live, what we believe in life, our thoughts, our belief systems, and our actions are based on the material conditions in which we exist, in which we interact with the world. And so if you have a population, and remember, prior to October 7th and then the subsequent genocide, the average age in Gaza was 18 years old. Most people that existed in Gaza had known nothing but what was inside of Gaza. Actually, I would say all people existing in Gaza probably only knew very little about what was happening outside of Gaza, if any. I know like there was free travel and all of that, but how far are the Palestinians even allowed to travel? Why would they? It would only be within to greater like the Israeli territory for a reason, and then to go back home. It wouldn't occur to anybody to think about further because they're not allowed to. That's what, an occupation, a open air prison that you live in is. That's the function of it, of course. Now, sorry, excuse me. Now, we know why. Like, we understand the reason why this would happen, but the fact that it has continued on for a year, it is a genocide now, obviously. And now Israel has attacked another country, Lebanon, and has turned southern Lebanon, at least from the photos, it looks exactly like Gaza does now. With the amount of bombs that have been dropped and the people that have been displaced and killed and suffering consistently still because they're invading Lebanon. We call it a special military operation, like we're Russians for some reason, but no, Israel has invaded Lebanon and they're occupying southern Lebanon, and they plan to occupy southern Lebanon for quite a while, I would say, even based on their own statements. And so now we think about them and the aspect of Iran and how this influences all of this, because Israel claims that they have been defending themselves against Iran wholly because Iran funds Hamas and Iran funds Hezbollah and Iran funds the people that don't like Israel and they don't want Israel to exist, right? All of these claims have been made. And likely all of these claims on the surface are probably true to an extent or not. But do we ask, is Israel funding groups within Iran that are trying to destabilize and attack Iran? Well, yes, they are. Are we going to ask who did it first? I mean, we can go look up the dates. I've seen, was it like 1993 for Iran starting to fund Hamas? But guess what? Israel also funded Hamas. Israel also armed Hamas and allowed them to exist in their territory because they thought it was useful to them. We have evidence of people involved. I think it was the defense minister, in fact, the current war cabinet defense minister more than a decade ago, talking about how Hamas is useful in putting a wedge between the Palestinians so that there isn't a coalesced Palestinian government between Gaza and the West Bank because they didn't want that. Playing the blame game in who funded the terrorist groups and who funded the militants is a game we can play that we all lose because we all fund the militants. That's kind of the issue here. And the way that we label these groups is just often incorrect because it's only based on bias. You can call someone like Hezbollah, right, as a good example because I disagree that they are a terrorist group. Now, are they labeled as one? Yes, they are, but they are a political party that's gotten 38%, I believe, of the vote in their last election. In their region. Like, they lost the election, but there's a sizable population there that supports them and is electorally voting for them. A terrorist organization doesn't engage in electoral politics very often, I would say, because, the whole point, well, they engage in electoral politics in a very different way. It is through inciting terror in the population through violence to influence the vote. Hezbollah's not doing violence within Lebanon to an extent that it's making international news and to influence the vote any more than you can realistically lay the blame on any other state. Now, are they influencing people's vote? No, yes, of course they are, but everyone else does too. That's why, like, we do propaganda. Do they do propaganda? I'm sure. Do they have a little like mob ring that goes around that, you know, roughs up people that have the wrong sign? Of course they do. But what do you expect? Like, America had this not 30 years ago, 40 years ago. We would have the mob walking around. Hey, you're not supposed to have that red poster, that blue poster, rip it down. Of course we did. Are we really, like, we cannot stoop to that level. Because when you get to get that deep in the weeds of labeling the terrorist groups, then it becomes very difficult to find one that's not, by definition, you know, including the United States government. Whereas it's more useful to use the word terrorism when it is an event, or as more of just like an attention-grabbing red flag of like, hey, look, this person is doing terror. It should not be labeled as easily and without consensus the way that we do, because it's just a propaganda tool, and we believe it. From an objective perspective, Iran is the one defending itself here. Iran is the one that was attacked first, officially by Israel, within their capital city, which prior to that was not a normal occurrence. You know, you don't start a war generally by bombing the capital unless you can instantly, you know, win the war. The way that, again, we did in Iraq. We took out the entire the Iraqi infrastructure within 3 days and took control of Baghdad. Done. That's the only time you do that, you know? And so it was weird, and they attacked a Iranian consulate in Syria. Meanwhile, they also seem to be bombing Syria while they're bombing Iran earlier in the day. Probably air defense or, you know, some other, who gives a shit? They just bomb everything. They want death. That's all we've seen since October 7th and onward is a military that is led by someone that is either so angry and such in a tantrum that they need to destroy everything, or someone who's evil and hates like several groups and has intentions to gain and maintain power. Now, which of those do you think is the most likely? Do you want to think about someone's ideology and try and guess that? No, that doesn't really track into reality often enough. Do you want to think about maybe their actions and consider the reasoning and the logic behind said actions? Honestly, I really do think that a basic logic class needs to be something that we implement into education, because many Americans don't know how to do that, to track one thought to its logical next conclusion. Anyway, look, so we don't know what's going to happen until Iran responds. Israel, hey, please be quiet. Now, we don't know how Iran is going to respond, but Israel has said that they've fulfilled their mission and that they will not continue an attack as long as as long as Iran doesn't attack back. Which, I mean, I feel like Iran has shown a lot of restraint up until now, and it would be impressive if they did again, because it would just help their cause of, we are just defending ourselves even more. But I don't know how much you can push a bunch of like crazy religious folk into not responding to your violence with violence. That's the simplest way to put it. I mean, it would be the smart move to not respond and to, again, go onto the world stage, onto media, onto the UN, even though you're going to get ignored, and to say, well, look, like, they attacked us again, and what are we supposed to do? We're not going to respond. We're just going to, talk about it. Israel will do it again, because they want, this is, like, it would be disappointing to them if Iran doesn't strike back, which is why I think they shouldn't. But again, how likely is it that you can do things like this and not have consequences? So this was Iran bombing Tel Aviv, which we've seen on stream. Like, it wasn't as, this is obviously a biased account, in the way that it's not showing the worst footage that they could have, but the worst footage that they could have also wasn't as bad as, you know, this. But again, there wasn't that much, like, it wasn't a normal, or what we would consider a normal Israeli strike either. Be aware that the news is going to be either incredibly biased in one direction or another for a while on this, especially with the use of bot networks, and because both of these countries have a sufficient cyber warfare like division of their government and of their defense forces. You're going to see a lot of shit online that isn't true. You're going to see a lot of bot accounts that are going to be responding to things, and just be wary. Be careful. Look out for things that might not make sense. Think about what you're reading and what you're seeing. And hopefully we don't get dragged into this war. I don't know. That's really all I wanted to say. Listen, like, the thing that I think is a higher likelihood of what could come from this is an incitement of further protests in Iran by Iranians because they feel unsafe, and propaganda that they may come across. I don't know how much Western, media even really makes it into Iran, but, they do have Instagram and Twitter, and so they will be seeing likely less, but still a consistent stream of Israeli propaganda, because all of it, jumbles together these days. You don't know if you're watching American propaganda, Russian propaganda, Chinese propaganda, Iranian, Israeli. It's all a mess. And this is part of the reason why no one believes anything. But this is a protest that happened in 2022, and it was sparked by the killing of a woman who didn't put her headscarf on.
These are the videos Iran doesn't want you to see. Police firing in the streets, women cutting their hair, burning hijabs in rage, students' demonstrations. People have taken to the streets across Iran, angry at the government after a woman died while in police custody. The BBC has been tracking and analysing hundreds of videos, mapping the unprecedented spread of this protest movement. The Iranian government has tried to shut down internet access. Disinformation is spreading across state and social media. Here's why this movement is unlike any Iran seen before.
Sorry, it's so hot. I had to put the fan on.
It all started with the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, arrested by the morality police in Tehran for wearing her hijab loosely. Multiple
Oh, sorry, it wasn't even that she wasn't wearing the hijab, it's that she hadn't had it on tight enough.
Beaten in a police truck while in custody. The state released CCTV footage claiming no violence occurred, and she collapsed from a heart attack. The news sparked fury.
So why do people... Okay, let's assume that she did have a heart attack. I mean, it could have been several different things. You can't diagnose what medical cause was there for someone to pass out from a video just like that. But let's go with the heart attack, right? Dehydration, malnutrition. These are things that would have occurred under custody. Those are things that absolutely contribute to the health of your body in general, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a heart attack. A lack of water, a lack of food in the right person with the right conditions can lead to kidney failure, to liver failure. You can have a lot of issues in your body occur when you don't have the literal fuel that it needs to exist. It could also have something to do with physical trauma that the body had experienced, let alone the psychic trauma that this woman has absolutely experienced. But, you know, what if there was head trauma? What if someone hit her in the chest hard enough that it threw her heart out of sync, which can happen, which led to her passing out and her heart stopping. Not out of sync is the wrong word for it. I can't remember the actual. Sorry. Phone should be on mute, not sound. Let's put that down. Yeah, so there could be many causes for a heart attack the idea of just, oh, it was a heart attack, we didn't do it, is ridiculous. When she was under police
At her
custody
funeral,
for days.
women ripped their headscarves off in solidarity. With restrictions on reporting on the ground, videos shared online are vital evidence in understanding how things are unfolding. The BBC and independent media are not allowed to report from Iran. But journalists across BBC Persian and BBC Monitoring have been gathering videos from social media and speaking to witnesses, tracking where protests broke out in the first few weeks. By using landmarks like this monument and these signs, and checking it against satellite images and pictures of the streets, the team can pinpoint the location of protests.
They also seem to have used this exact method to pinpoint a Iranian air defense system that seemed to get destroyed in this strike. Yep, so that's the tower, or the train tracks, and the bridge would be there. And that is the destroyed air defense system. Yeah, that tracks. I mean, again, this could be doctored. We don't know because it just happened. It happened today. When we were talking about a military event, such as the invasion or the beginning of a war, or just really random military attacks on a country that doesn't necessarily often have to report on it, the systems aren't there, that accurate information is always going to come out because there's not, reporters there like constantly whose job it is to only pay attention to this because it hasn't begun yet. There's people whose job, those people right now have the job of paying attention to everything that's happening that could lead to that, not it actually happening, and therefore missing things that the government's obviously going to find, but they have state media. There's no other way for real information to get out other than through the internet, and so you miss things in the beginning of conflicts like this, and people fake shit up. You make fake shit up and post it online, and to be able to discern whether it's real or not, there isn't enough real information to compare it to, and so always take this kind of stuff with a grain of salt. You never know.
We've analysed more than 1,000 videos and compared our work to reporting from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, verifying at least 300 protests since Amini's death. In just 16 days, it's clear just how quickly and widely civil unrest has spread across Iran.
And this was only a couple years ago. So the idea that Israel wants to reignite this level of civil unrest and civil disobedience and rebellion even, preferably to Israel, rebellion would be the best outcome of this. Whether it be successful or not, they don't care. It just weakens Iran. And this is not unlikely to happen. The internal feelings towards the ruling government, from at least what I've heard from the people that I know that, have family in the region, live in the region, they don't like the government. They're not in a revolutionary mindset yet, not enough at the very least, but there is precedent there. There is anger here. There's resentment, and there's this built up idea of the government has abused us, has oppressed us, and we don't want this anymore. And again, remember how we got to this point is, America kind of caused it, but the overthrowing of the Shah, which led to the theocracy. People can still overthrow their governments. It's not going to happen in a place like America, unfortunately, or Israel, but it's just about consolidation. Iran has absolutely consolidated their state media and their military power, but not the disposition and the beliefs and the thoughts of the average Iranian citizen. And that's kind of the point, and even the government here does not want a full-scale war. If they did, it would have happened already. And so, who knows? It really depends on how they respond and how their response affects the actual Iranian, the person living inside of Iran, the people living in Tehran who just witnessed bombs dropping next to their houses, who probably have some feelings about it now. And how those are addressed is going to really define how the Iranian public are going to feel about further violent action between Iran and Israel and war. Iran's not going to invade Israel. That's never going to happen. They couldn't. America would. That's the point, that we would stop them. And again, how do you get all of your military and your tanks and your artillery and your soldiers from all the way over here? Tehran is here, and this is all mountains. You can see the topography on the map to here. You have to cross through Iraq, you have to cross through Syria, and obviously Iraq does not want that to happen. They won't allow that to happen to the best of their ability. Neither does Syria. You can't. And Israel's not going to invade Iran because A, same reasons, and B, they couldn't anyway. They would not be able to, I don't know. Could the IDF use all of their strength to make their way, tunnel their way into Iran? And by tunnel, I don't necessarily literally mean tunnel. It's just, make a beeline towards Tehran and take the city. Theoretically, they have a nuclear weapon, I'm sure. And so does Iran, I'm sure. Whether they have one or not, we don't, we think that they're close, but they might already just have one. And so neither of these countries is going for an invasion. They're just going to keep talking shit and firing missiles at each other because, again, Iran doesn't want further conflict and Israel needs America to help them, or this doesn't work. And I just hope that they know. But in the worst case, in the case of a wider war that could draw in America or possibly China or Russia or India or Saudi Arabia or Turkey, there's lots of possibility here for things to get not great. And the idea of the people of Iran rising up against their government because they're angry could be one of the possible goals on the table here. Is it the one that they're necessarily aiming for? I don't know. I'm not... Thank fucking every god in the world that I am not part of the IDF and sitting there planning this, but we don't know what they think. And whether it's an option on the table for them as a military strategy or a goal, I do think it is a likely outcome that could happen depending on how Iran responds.
That has been unprecedented. Women publicly cutting their hair off, defying Iranian modesty laws, confronting the riot police. Plainclothes officers traveling with police, stopping to violently beat protesters. These images have struck a chord with Iranians. Today's authorities are suppressing mobile data access in an attempt to control the narrative and stifle the ability to share videos online.
Which they have consistently kept doing, but there's difficulty in doing that around a subject like the bombing of your own country, you know. That is the only way you deal with that is a flood of misinformation, which is also likely to happen, of course. But how much of it actually gets through, how it is, well, to be fair, what the intent of the actual misinformation and the disinformation is, how it's applied, and the effects of it are all hypotheticals at the moment. But they do still engage in this, and it's just another layer of complication that confuses the outcome.
Track this by looking at key hashtags used by protesters. They drop off significantly as these restrictions increase. The government have painted
They also do
protesters
just move
as
to different
vandals,
hashtags.
accusing them of destroying ambulances. The BBC team has found footage showing this isn't the whole picture. People have warned that
That was closed, by the way. That
reportedly
wasn't
died
any
in the
anything else than that.
fueling
Just a
the
t-shirt. And it's again, that's something else. That's not a person. Now, we understand that this is a possibility. Is it the goal? Who knows? What's going to happen? We're not going to find out until Iran responds. Whether it be through what they say they're going to do or whether what they actually do. I mean, I do have live UA map open. It keeps refreshing. There's nothing there at the moment aside from prior to this Iran saying, you know, don't do it. We're not going to go easy on you if you do, which of course that's what they were saying. It's a tricky situation. I'm scared, guys. You know, I don't want this to have to get worse. Why can't we just stop already? Like, there's the genocide in Gaza has gotten so much worse. They're literally starving people to death, like hundreds of thousands of people. I don't know how many Palestinians are going to be left at the end of this. They've fully invaded Lebanon. Why are we just allowing this? I understand that it's easy for the American government and that it leads to I don't know, I guess in their head better. Yes, please. Could you get me some nuggets? Yeah, all right. I gotta wrap it up because I got McDonald's coming. But you guys understand, right? This is not normal. This is not okay. And Israel is absolutely, without a doubt, the aggressor here. Anyway, again, this is more of like a tease of next stream. In case something happens, that might be tomorrow. If this kicks off, to say, if the powder keg finally explodes, then I will cover it live. But otherwise, I'll see you on Monday. We got too much to go over to only focus on this. I just did really, really want to mention the actual possibility of civil unrest inside of Iran, because this was not a thing that I was seeing in any of the Western media from this. You know, AP, Reuters, CNN, we're all talking about the possible consequences of the attack and what it could lead to, but very little attention was paid to what actually is the scope of the feelings inside of Iran. And I think we need to keep all of this in mind and prepare for the future in the best way that we can, in the most educated and intentional intentional in our desire of like what we want, which is just stop killing each other. The more real information, the more reality we engage with, I think the easier it becomes to push out all the fake information. I mean, the more practice you have, the easier it is to not fall for the fake bot created and human created propaganda, memes and videos and photos and the deep fakes from AI and God, like, pay attention. That's what I mean. The media environment, especially right now, is fucking toxic and filled with trash to an extent in which we cannot even fathom. I don't even know how much of any social media feed that I open is even real anymore. is based entirely on sources that you already trust and that you go to for information, and otherwise everyone else is a lie. And that's how most people engage with the world. Unfortunately, the issue is when the people that you're engaging with and the people that you trust are the wrong people, it's really difficult to pull someone out of that hole. And to not fall in should be pretty high up there on your